My name is Josephine. I'm 6 years old. One night I heard the floorboards creak at 2:47 a.m. That specific sound, the one right outside Mia's bedroom door. My eyes opened in the darkness, and for a moment I told myself it was nothing. Just the house settling. Just my imagination. But then I heard it again. Soft footsteps moving down the hallway, deliberate and careful, like someone trying not to be heard. My daughter's door had opened, and she was moving through our home in complete silence while she thought I was asleep. I didn't move. I barely breathed. Something in my gut twisted. That mother's instinct that tells you when something is wrong, even when everything looks right. Mia was 17, yes, but this wasn't a trip to the bathroom or a midnight snack run. This was different. The footsteps had purpose. They had direction, and they were heading toward the back door. I slipped out of bed, my heart hammering against my ribs, and moved to my bedroom window. Through the curtain, I saw her, my daughter, dressed in dark clothes, glancing back at the house one more time before disappearing into the shadows of our backyard. That's when I knew, with absolute certainty, that the girl I thought I knew was keeping secrets I couldn't have imagined. Where was she going at 3 in the morning? Who was she meeting in the darkness while her mother slept, trusting her, believing in her? These questions burned through my mind as I stood there, frozen between fear and disbelief. I'd raised Mia by myself since she was 8, after her father walked out. We'd been a team, just the two of us, against the world. Or so I thought. Now, watching her silhouette fade into the night, I realized there might be parts of her world I'd never been invited into. I grabbed my phone, my hands shaking, and checked the time again. 2:51 a.m. No text messages, no emergency, just my daughter, sneaking out like our home was a prison she needed to escape. I thought about calling her, demanding she come back, but something stopped me. If I confronted her now, would she ever tell me the truth? Or would she just get better at hiding? So instead, I made a decision that would change everything between us. I pulled on my shoes, grabbed my jacket, and followed her into the night. Because whatever she was hiding, whatever she was running toward or running from, I needed to know, even if the truth destroyed me. Before we dive deeper, let us know in the comments where you're watching from and what time is it there. We'd love to hear from you. And if you're new here, click on the subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming stories. To understand that night, you need to understand our life before it. Mia and I weren't just mother and daughter. We were best friends. Or at least, that's what I told myself every time someone asked how we managed so well on our own. When David left, Mia was in 3rd grade. I remember her asking me why Daddy took his suitcase and didn't come back. I told her some people aren't strong enough to stay, but we were. We would be different. We would be stronger. And we were, for years. I worked double shifts as a nurse at County General, and Mia learned to be independent early. She'd make her own breakfast, pack her own lunch, do her homework without being asked. By the time she hit high school, she was getting straight A's, running track, volunteering at the animal shelter on weekends. Everyone said what an amazing kid she was. What an incredible job I'd done raising her alone. I believed them. I was proud, maybe too proud to see what was really happening. The changes started small, so small I dismissed them. Last year, around October, she started spending more time in her room. Teenagers need privacy, I told myself. That's normal. Then the phone calls became whispered conversations behind closed doors. When I'd walk in, she'd quickly say goodbye and set the phone down, smiling at me like nothing was unusual. I'd ask who it was, and she'd say just Emma, or just Kayla, names of friends I knew from school. I had no reason to doubt her. By Christmas, she'd started going out more. Friday nights, sometimes Saturdays. Study group, she'd say. Or Emma's having people over. She'd be home by 11, always on time, always with a reasonable story. I'd smell her clothes when I did laundry, looking for cigarette smoke or alcohol, anything that might indicate trouble. Nothing. She seemed fine, happy even. More independent, yes, but isn't that what we want for our children? to grow up, to have their own lives. But there were moments, small moments, I couldn't quite explain. Like the time I came home early from work and found her crying in the bathroom. She said it was just stress from midterms, but her eyes held something deeper, something haunted. Or the weekend she asked to spend the night at Kayla's house, and when I called Kayla's mom to confirm, there was a strange pause before she said yes, of course. The girls were having a great time. That pause stayed with me. It felt like a lie covering a lie. Then there were the phone calls. Not the ones Mia made, but the ones she received. Sometimes late at night, her phone would buzz, and I'd see her grab it immediately. Her face lit by the screen's glow, her expression unreadable. Once, I asked her if everything was okay. She looked at me with those big brown eyes, the same eyes that used to tell me everything, and said, "Mom, I'm 17. I'm not a baby anymore." And I backed off, because she was right. I couldn't helicopter parent forever, but a mother knows. Deep down, beneath the rational explanations and the normal teenage behavior, I knew something was off. I just didn't know what, and I was terrified to push too hard and drive her away completely. So I watched, and I waited, and I told myself everything was fine. Until that night. The night I heard those footsteps. The night everything I thought I knew came crashing down. I kept my distance, maybe 50 feet behind her, using parked cars and shadows to stay hidden. My neighborhood was quiet at this hour, just streetlights casting orange pools on the pavement and the occasional dog barking in the distance. Mia moved quickly, confidently, like she'd done this before. Many times before. That realization hit me like a physical blow. How many nights had she snuck out while I slept, exhausted from 12-hour shifts? Trusting her, never knowing. She cut through the Hendersons' backyard, hopped their fence with practiced ease, and emerged on Maple Street. I followed, my breath coming in short gasps, partly from exertion but mostly from fear. Fear of what I'd discover. Fear of who my daughter really was. We walked for 15 minutes, moving away from our suburban neighborhood toward the older part of town, where the houses were smaller and the streetlights were fewer and farther between. Then she stopped, right in front of an old 2-story house with peeling paint and a sagging porch. The house was dark, except for a faint light in one upstairs window. Mia stood on the sidewalk, looking up at that window, and I pressed myself against a tree, watching. My heart was pounding so hard I thought she might hear it. For a full minute, she just stood there. Then the front door opened. A man stepped out. He was older, maybe mid-30s, wearing jeans and a dark hoodie. I couldn't see his face clearly from where I was hiding, but I saw the way he looked at my daughter, and I saw the way she looked back at him. She walked up those porch steps, and he put his hand on the small of her back, guiding her inside. The door closed behind them. The light in the upstairs window went out. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. I stood there in the darkness, shaking, my mind racing through every horrible possibility. Was this some kind of relationship? Was he taking advantage of her? Was she being trafficked, groomed? The word groomed kept repeating in my head like a siren. I'd seen cases at the hospital. Teenage girls brought in by police. Victims of older men who'd manipulated them online. Promised them love, promised them escape. I pulled out my phone to call 911, but my hands were shaking so badly I could barely unlock the screen. What would I say? My daughter willingly entered a house with a man? I didn't know if a crime was being committed. I didn't know anything. But I knew I couldn't just stand there. I had to do something. I crossed the street, approaching the house carefully. The porch steps creaked under my weight, and I froze, terrified someone would hear. But no one came to the door. Up close, I could see the house was in bad shape. Paint peeling, windows dirty, a broken flower pot by the door. This wasn't the home of someone who had their life together. This was the home of someone barely hanging on, or someone who didn't want to be noticed. I tried to peek through the front window, but heavy curtains blocked my view. I moved around the side of the house, looking for another window, any way to see what was happening inside. That's when I heard voices. muted, coming from somewhere above. I couldn't make out words, but I recognized Mia's voice. She didn't sound scared. She didn't sound like she was in danger. She sounded normal, like she was having a conversation. I stood there in the weeds beside that house, mosquitoes buzzing around my head, and tried to decide what to do. Knock on the door? Call the police anyway? Wait and follow her home? Every option felt wrong. Every option felt like it would end in disaster, but I couldn't leave. I couldn't walk away knowing my daughter was in there with a strange man in the middle of the night. So I waited. 15 minutes, 30, 45. My legs ached. My back hurt. I kept checking my phone, watching the time crawl forward. 3:47 a.m., 4:03 a.m., 4:19 a.m. What were they doing in there? The questions tortured me, each one worse than the last. I imagined confronting them, bursting through that door like police in a raid. I imagined finding something that would break me forever. At 4:31 a.m., the door opened. Mia came out first, and even in the dim light from the street lamp, I could see she was crying. Not sobbing, just quiet tears rolling down her cheeks. The man followed her onto the porch. He said something I couldn't hear, and she nodded. Then he pulled her into a hug, a long hug, and she let him. She wrapped her arms around him and held on like he was the only solid thing in a world falling apart. When they separated, he handed her something. I couldn't see what it was from my hiding spot, but she put it in her pocket. They talked for another minute, both of them speaking in low voices, and then she turned and walked down the porch steps. He watched her go, standing there until she disappeared around the corner. Only then did he go back inside and close the door. I didn't follow Mia immediately. I couldn't. My legs wouldn't move. I stood there in the weeds, trying to process what I'd seen. The hug had been tender, almost parental. The tears suggested emotion, maybe pain, but not fear. Nothing about the scene matched the horrific scenarios I'd imagined, but that didn't make it okay. That didn't explain what my 17-year-old daughter was doing with a grown man in the middle of the night. If this story has your heart racing, comment, "I'm still watching." Let's see who's truly following until the end. I made it home before Mia did. I'd taken a different route, practically running, and I was in bed with the lights off when I heard the back door open quietly, heard her footsteps in the hall, heard her bedroom door close. I lay there in the darkness, staring at the ceiling, my mind spinning. What was I supposed to do? Confront her immediately? Pretend I didn't know? Call the police and report the man? Every option felt impossible. When morning came, I was still awake. I heard Mia's alarm go off at 7, heard her shower, get dressed, come downstairs for breakfast, like it was any other Saturday morning. I was sitting at the kitchen table with coffee I couldn't drink, trying to look normal, trying to figure out what to say. She walked in wearing sweatpants and one of her track hoodies, her hair still damp. "Morning, Mom," she said, heading straight for the refrigerator. "Morning, sweetie." My voice sounded strange even to me. Too high, too tight. "Sleep okay?" "Yeah, fine." She poured orange juice, grabbed a granola bar. Normal. Everything was so devastatingly normal. "I'm going to Emma's later. Probably around noon. We're working on our history project." A lie. I knew it was a lie. But I nodded and said, "Okay, just text me if you'll be late for dinner." She smiled at me, kissed my cheek, and headed back upstairs. And I sat there, feeling like I was watching my daughter through glass, close enough to see her but unable to reach her. The girl sitting across from me at breakfast was a stranger. Or maybe I was the stranger, an outsider in her real life. For the next 3 days, I barely slept. I'd lie awake, listening for footsteps, checking her location on the family tracking app, watching for any sign she was sneaking out again. But she didn't. She went to school, came home, did homework, watched TV with me, normal. On Tuesday night, I almost convinced myself I'd imagined the whole thing. Maybe I'd been dreaming. Maybe the stress of work and single parenting had finally caught up to me. Then Thursday night, I heard the footsteps again. 2:33 a.m. this time. I was ready. I'd been sleeping in my clothes, shoes by the bed. I followed her again, keeping farther back this time, and sure enough, she went to the same house. The same man opened the door. The same routine played out, except this time, I got closer. I crept up to the side of the house where I'd found a window with a gap in the curtains. My hands were shaking as I stood on my tiptoes and looked inside. What I saw made no sense. Mia was sitting on a couch in what looked like a living room. The man sat across from her in an armchair. Between them was a coffee table with papers spread across it. They were talking, but not in any way that suggested romance or anything inappropriate. It looked like a meeting, like a counseling session. The man was taking notes. Mia was crying again, wiping her eyes with her sleeve while she talked. I couldn't hear what they were saying through the window, but I watched for 20 minutes, trying to understand. At one point, the man got up and brought Mia a glass of water. She drank it, said something that made him nod seriously, and continued talking. He listened, asked questions, wrote things down. This wasn't what I'd feared, but I still didn't understand what it was. When Mia left that night, I didn't go home first. I waited until she was out of sight. Then I walked up to that front door and knocked. Hard. 3 solid knocks that echoed in the pre-dawn silence. I didn't care anymore about being careful or strategic. I needed answers, and I needed them now. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then the porch light came on, and the door opened a crack. The man looked at me through the gap, his eyes wary. Up close, I could see he was younger than I'd thought, maybe late 20s, with dark circles under his eyes and the kind of exhaustion that comes from carrying heavy things. "Can I help you?" he asked. "That girl who just left," I said, my voice shaking with anger and fear, "is my daughter. And you're going to tell me right now what's going on, or I'm calling the police. If you're still here, comment, 'Still here.'" He stared at me for a long moment, and I saw recognition dawn in his eyes. Then, surprisingly, he opened the door wider and stepped back. "You're Laura," he said. "It wasn't a question. She talks about you. You should come in." I didn't want to go into that house. Every instinct screamed at me to run, to call for help, to not trust this stranger. But I needed to know. So I stepped inside, keeping my phone in my hand, 911 ready to dial. The inside of the house was sparse but clean. Secondhand furniture, but organized. Books everywhere. On the coffee table, I saw the papers they'd been looking at. Medical records, test results, prescription information. "My name is Marcus Webb," the man said, gesturing to the couch. "I'm a licensed social worker. I specialize in grief counseling for teenagers." The words didn't make sense at first. I just stared at him, then at the papers on the table. "Grief counseling? What are you talking about?" He sat down in the armchair, looking uncomfortable. "Miss Patterson, I think you need to talk to Mia about this. It's not really my place." "Tell me," I interrupted. "Right now. Tell me what's going on." He hesitated, then sighed. "About 6 months ago, Mia reached out to the crisis center where I volunteer. She called the hotline at 2 in the morning, crying, saying she couldn't handle it anymore. She talked to one of our counselors for an hour. When she called back the next week, I took the call, and we've been meeting ever since." "Meeting about what?" "She's fine. She's happy. I stopped because even as I said it, I knew it wasn't true. "She's grieving," Marcus said softly. "For her father. For the life she thought she'd have. For feeling like she has to be perfect because you work so hard to give her everything. She's carrying weight she doesn't think she can tell you about, because she doesn't want to add to your burden." The words hit me like a slap. Her father left 9 years ago. She was fine. She got over it. Kids don't get over abandonment, Miss Patterson. They just learn to hide how much it hurts. And Mia is exceptionally good at hiding. He leaned forward, his voice gentle. "She loves you. She doesn't want you to know how much pain she's in because she thinks it'll hurt you. So she smiles during the day and falls apart at night. When you're asleep and can't see, I thought about all those times I'd been so proud of how well she was handling everything, how mature she was, how independent. I'd been proud of teaching her to be strong, but I'd never stopped to ask if she wanted to be strong, or if she just thought that's what I needed her to be. Why didn't she come to me? Because you're her hero, Marcus said simply. You worked 2 jobs to support her. You've sacrificed everything. How could she tell you she's drowning when you're the one keeping her afloat? So she found another way. She found me. And the sneaking out? The middle of the night meetings? Her idea, he admitted. I usually work out of the crisis center. But she was terrified you'd find out she was going to counseling. She thought you'd think she was weak, or that you'd failed as a mother, or that you couldn't afford to add therapy to your expenses. So we compromised. I meet with her here, at my house, off the books, because she begged me to help her, and I couldn't turn away a kid who was hurting that badly. I felt like the floor had dropped out from under me. All those nights I'd thought she was fine, she'd been suffering. All those days she'd smiled at me over breakfast, she'd been carrying pain I couldn't see. And instead of coming to me, she'd found a stranger to talk to because she loved me too much to burden me with her truth. I left Marcus's house as the sun was rising, and I drove home in a daze. Mia was already awake when I got there, sitting at the kitchen table with her laptop, working on homework. She looked up when I walked in, and I saw fear flash across her face. She knew. Somehow, she knew I'd found out. Mom, she started, but I held up my hand. Let me say something first, I said, sitting down across from her. I followed you last night, and Thursday. I met Marcus, and he told me everything. Tears filled her eyes immediately. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I didn't know how to. Stop, I said, reaching across the table to take her hands. You don't need to apologize. I do. I've been so focused on making sure you had everything you needed, food, clothes, money for college, that I forgot to make sure you felt safe telling me when you were hurting. You work so hard, she whispered. I didn't want to make things harder. Mia, you are not a burden. Your feelings are not a burden. If I've made you feel like you can't come to me with pain because I'm too tired or too stressed, then I failed you in the most important way. I squeezed her hands. I want you to keep seeing Marcus if he helps you, but I also want you to know that you can always, always talk to me, even about the hard things, especially about the hard things. She cried then, really cried, and I came around the table and held her while she let out months of hidden grief. We talked for hours that morning, about her father, about the pressure she felt to be perfect, about her fears and her sadness, and all the things she'd been carrying alone. I told her about my own struggles, my own doubts, the nights I'd cried in the bathroom after she went to bed because I was scared I wasn't enough. We weren't fixed that day. Healing doesn't work that quickly. But we started being honest with each other. Really honest. Marcus suggested family counseling, and I agreed. We started going together every other week. Mia continued her sessions with him, but now, during normal hours, at the crisis center, with me paying what I could and the center covering the rest with their sliding scale fees, some nights I still wake up and check to make sure she's in her room. But now, when I do, I knock on her door instead of just listening. And sometimes she's awake, struggling with something, and instead of hiding it, she lets me in. We're learning to be a team again, but this time, an honest one. So I ask you, listening to this, what would you have done? If you discovered your child was suffering in silence, carrying pain they thought was too heavy to share, how would you have responded? Could you have handled the truth? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Have you ever hidden pain from someone you love to protect them? Or have you been the person who didn't see someone suffering right in front of you? Let's talk about it. Because sometimes the bravest thing we can do is admit we're not okay. And sometimes the most loving thing we can do is create space for that honesty. If this story touched you, subscribe for more real stories about the complicated, beautiful, heartbreaking reality of being human. Because the night holds secrets, yes, but morning brings the chance to bring them into the light.